Hello everybody, and welcome to the second episode of Pennsylvania Budget on the Run. This year, Donna Malpezzi with DMM Consulting and myself, we are doing a different approach to the Pennsylvania Budget on the Run. That is, we are looking at issues in the area of human services and trying to put a face behind those issues. Today, we're here with the Pennsylvania Association of Area Agencies on Aging. These are the folks out in the counties and in the communities that really care for our elderly population in Pennsylvania. And with us, we've got Rebecca May Cole, the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Association. We also have guests with us. We have Mark Shea, who is the Director from York County Area Agency on Aging. And we have Jen Weitkamp, who is the Director of Protective Services with the York County AAA. Correct?
Yes.
Great. So here we are today, and we're going to talk aging. But let's first start, Rebecca, giving our viewers a sense of what are the area agencies of aging? What do they do? How many do we have in Pennsylvania? And what is the association's role?
There are 52 area agencies on aging. They cover all 67 counties of the state. So in some areas, there's more than one county represented by an area agency on aging. We do refer to them as AAAs, which makes it a little easier to talk about. But they are not the American Automobile Association. They're the agencies.
Don't
area
forget
agencies.
that, right?
When we're talking AAAs, we're talking about older adults,
That's
not
right.
repairing your tires and all of that. And so some of those area agencies on aging are part of county government. York County, for example, is
York
part of county
County.
government. And then some are actually nonprofit organizations. Some were formed as nonprofit organizations from the beginning. AAAs have been around for more than 40 years in Pennsylvania and across the country. And they were established by the Older Americans Act. And really the focus of area agencies on aging is really to advocate on behalf of older adults in Pennsylvania. And really just work hard to make sure that they're receiving the services that they need, that they have the best quality of life possible, that they can live where they want, which is the majority of the time in the home,
Right.
And receive the services that they need in their homes as opposed to going to, for example, a nursing home or something like that.
So the AAAs, do they provide the services or do they help coordinate services for the elderly population in their county or in their service area?
They do some of both.
They do.
And it varies based on the AAA. One of the nice things about area agencies on aging is they have that ability to really tailor the needs to their local community. So depending on the needs of that community, they're able to either subcontract some services, sometimes they provide them in-house. They're able to coordinate with other local organizations to make that dollar stretch further. So it's very local based and very community based.
And of course, we know that the demographics nationally and here in Pennsylvania are having a huge impact. In fact, it's my understanding that one of the fastest growing age segments in Pennsylvania is the 85 and older population. Now you start serving individuals or seniors qualified age 60
At 60.
for your services, is that right? But we do know this is a fast growing population. Donna, I know you wanted to get into some budget issues and how they're funded.
Well, it's my understanding you've been flat funded for a considerable period of time, and I think that's of great concern, especially given the demographics. I mean, we know there's more people, so how do we accommodate the fact that there are more people in that population, and 85 plus people are super expensive as far as in-home services, and then potentially going into a nursing home and spending down. And that's why I believe, based on what I understand, your services are so critical, because they keep people out of nursing homes, which costs the Commonwealth a lot of money. So if you would explain your funding crisis, I think it's fair to call it a crisis. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the area agencies on aging are primarily funded through the Aging Block Grant. And that is funded through the lottery fund, and there are some, federal dollars that also come in, but primarily through the lottery fund, which is supported by lottery tickets and lottery sales. So everyone go out and buy your lottery ticket tonight. Oh, do you have one with you? That's great. Hey, pick your numbers. Thank you. So they, you know,
Very good.
you see that on all of the commercials with Gus,
Correct,
the second
Gus,
most famous
right.
groundhog in PA. It does go to support older adults, and this is a perfect example of how those funds are used to support older adults. So you have that block grant, and if you picture the block grant as sort of like a pie of funds, that the area agencies on aging have that pot of money that they can slice up as they need to. In some areas, some slices may be bigger than others. There are certain requirements that they have to have, but generally they have some level of flexibility in what they can spend those dollars on.
Right.
And when you have a situation where that pot has stayed the same primarily, and you have an increase in the number of older adults, the amount that can go to each older adult is reduced. As well as when you talk about protective services, which we'll talk about in a little bit, when you have a grave need like that, you have to put more money towards something like protective services, which means it squeezes out some of those other services. They're either eliminated or dramatically reduced, or people have to go on waiting lists.
Let's ask Mark. Mark, you are the head of the York County Area Agency on Aging, so you oversee a lot of these programs that Rebecca was just alluding to that are funded through the lottery block grant. Can you share with us some of those programs, what kind of programs they are?
Sure, those range for things like personal care, where we can send somebody into somebody's home and help them bathe because they no longer can do that themselves. Adult daycare, where somebody with dementia may go and spend the day so that the family can go to work. Home delivered meals, lifeline units, those buttons that I've fallen and I can't get up.
Right.
Transportation, you name it. There's probably a program out there for it that we can provide through the lottery funding.
You had started to share before we got into the program this funnel idea that you have put together. Can you kind of walk us through that?
Sure.
The funnel?
I was asked by someone to explain what's kind of happening with services and protective services and the growth in the senior population. The best I could come up with was a funnel. I see aging services as a large funnel that you start somebody at the top of the funnel. And you know when you spin a ball around a funnel, at the top it spins very slowly.
Right.
The top of the funnel is the very inexpensive area. So you put a consumer in the top and you start them spinning through the services. They're getting personal care. They're getting a lifeline unit. A lifeline unit a month might be $25. If all they need is a lifeline unit and we can keep them spinning with a lifeline unit, we're good.
Right.
Over time though, as we've had to shift funding because of the lack of increases and the increase just generally in the population, we've had to pull services out. And as we do that, that person may rotate through that funnel, but now they're missing things that used to be there to support them, and they're not. So they start to drop down the funnel, and as they drop down, they spin a little bit faster. And soon what winds up happening is their health starts to decline, they move a little further down the funnel, and as they get to the bottom of the funnel, they pop out and they're in protective services. And that's the very expensive end of the funnel. So while you could have served them inexpensively at the top, you're now serving them in a program, a mandated program, which is very expensive.
Donna, I know you were asking earlier about what are protective services.
Right, Jen, or if you wanna talk about, I mean, for you, it's an everyday occurrence in terms of protective services and how that works.
Yeah, so protective services, basically we're tasked with the responsibility to mitigate risk to older adults. Our agency, we do all of the intake for 18 and up, but we only investigate folks that are 60 and over. So pretty much what happens is we are given different scenarios presented to us. That could be anything from someone's mismanaging medications to somebody is care dependent and was abandoned by their caregiver. And then our staff is tasked to go out and assess the situation and pretty much figure out, is this person at imminent risk right now? And if the answer is yes, what do we need to do right this moment to try to put a band-aid on the situation to make it safe for the older adult?
And who usually calls you? Like, how do you get
So
notified?
anybody can call us. We do a lot of speaking engagements in the community. So we serve somebody regardless of where they're at. They could be in a private residence, they could be at the hospital, a nursing home, personal care home, wherever. And when we're notified of them, of the situation, we go to where the person is.
Okay.
Jen, can you share a story or two of, and I know you can't share names of your your clients that you work with, but can you share with us some of the stories of some of the situations you've seen related to protective services?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one that comes to mind specifically regarding some of these services that we spoke about earlier, we had a couple that had been served in the community for many years, but were sort of at the point where they were needing more support. And the kind of support that they needed was just basically someone checking in, ensuring that their bills were being paid. They needed to make sure that they were getting to doctor's appointments. They needed someone to help with their laundry. That was a really big issue. They did not have laundry in their home. Because there was really no one to provide those three services, we ended up going down a really long path of ending up having to remove them from their apartment because they were unable to pay their rent. They were unable to maintain their hygiene. They ended up in the eviction process not only from the rent but also because there was really no one to help them maintain that apartment any longer. And those kinds of services for us just simply don't exist. Or like, for example, the laundry, we had the woman in the situation was very prone to urinary tract infections, and she had no one to assist her with washing her clothing on a regular basis, so she would wear her clothing for much longer than was appropriate. So while those things independently don't seem to be that big of a deal, when you couple them all together and you have limited supports in the community, it really ends up being disastrous for some people, with the end result of them having to go somewhere else with more support to live.
And laundry, the home support piece is one of the services that we had to stop offering a number of years ago because we've had to shift funding to protective services, and we're getting hit on the front end with 72 million baby boomers that are coming through the system, that there simply wasn't enough funding to do it.
Funding.
Right, and that's considered an ancillary service, so it's not considered a primary service. So in order to continue to support people with primary services, we had to shut ancillary services down.
See, this is a good example, I think. When people hear protective services, I think a lot of people just automatically go to things such as either physical abuse or financial abuse, and while that surely is part of it, hearing this kind of an example where everyday tasks no longer are able to be performed and how that impacts everything. So Rebecca, I know you were talking earlier about this, taking from Peter to pay Paul, and how it's just not sustainable to do. Can you talk a little more about that issue itself?
Sure. Well, I want to clarify a little bit as far as the funding that's received. There is the
Please do.
overall aging block grant that's received.
From the lottery?
From the lottery, yes, through the Department of Aging, from the lottery fund. And those dollars, there are specific requirements for the dollars. I'm going like this because there's a sheet that actually shows all of the different categories that can be spent. For a number of years, there was something, just the block grant, the regular block grant, and that's the majority of the funding for all of those programs that Mark was talking about in the funnel. That's where they were funded out of. There was an increase in funds a few years ago that was specifically tied to the options program. And that options program is the services basically that Mark was talking about. The difference and the difficulty is that while there had been an increase in the options program, which we certainly appreciate and we're able to serve people, those dollars are specifically prohibited from being used to support just the basic operations of the organizations. And so those dollars, while they can be specifically given to a senior, you've got people like Mark who are running their agencies who have dramatically more needs, being presented to them. They've got their staff. You've got, the increases, if you look at the past 10 years, what are the increases in the cost of your electrical bill and your, salaries and all of those kinds of things. And that really puts the squeeze on the AAAs because frankly, when they have that pot of money, they're gonna do everything they can to get those dollars out to the community. They are not, frankly, in some ways, they're almost doing themselves a disservice so that they're able to serve the seniors.
Well, again, thank you, Rebecca and Mark and Jen. We really had a great conversation here at the Pennsylvania Association for Area Agencies on Aging. We'll be back with another episode in a few weeks focusing on mental illness.